It's early evening in a rain-soaked Wolverhampton, and for restaurant inspectors John and Faye, it's the start of another evening's shift, keeping a watchful eye on some of the city's 500 eateries. On their roster tonight is a local Indian takeaway due for a routine inspection.
It's often quite good to have a look at the menu, just so you sort of familiarise yourself with the types of food they're doing, so that allows you to ask perhaps the appropriate questions, and if there's anything slightly unusual, you can sort of question them about that if you need to.
After getting togged up, first John always seeks out a basin to wash his hands.
We're trying to encourage businesses to sort of follow good hygiene practices, so it's really good if businesses are seeing, we've come in, before we do anything, we wash our hands. It's just sort of encouraging them to do the same, really. Also, it gives you a great opportunity to make sure they've got the necessary hand washing facilities available. Another thing you can do when you go to wash your hands is actually check that the basin has been used, i.e. is it bone dry. Sometimes you walk into a premises, you go to wash your hands, they've been preparing food for a couple of hours and the sink's bone dry. This one was wet. Okay, I think I've just broke your hand dry.
Slightly embarrassed about his rough treatment of their towel dispenser, John heads outside to inspect the back of the restaurant.
We often come out into the sort of the behind the scenes bit, if you like, outside the rear door, sort of to check the condition of the land surrounding. Unfortunately, you just missed a rat run across the ground. Now, obviously, we don't want to see accumulations of waste and things that are going to harbour rodents, because if you encourage rodents into an area near a food premises, you've got the risk, then the additional risk of them finding their way inside. Not great with the door left open. Like I said, I did see a rat. Now with the door left open, they run the risk of the rat running straight into the food premises, which is obviously a complete no-no. So one thing we will be saying is make sure that the door's kept shut.
For John, this inspection hasn't really got off to the best of starts.
First impressions aren't particularly good. Obviously we'll have to move and go inside and look more detailed, but just walking through didn't look particularly clean. The structure looked in poor condition. Outside we've seen a rat, we've seen accumulations of waste. I think we perhaps need to get inside and look a bit more closely at what's happening inside.
In Wolverhampton, restaurant inspectors John and Faye are continuing their inspection of a local takeaway. Within 5 minutes of arriving, John has already seen a rat at the back of the premises, and the general state of the restaurant hasn't impressed. Let's just hope a closer look at the kitchen proves more to his liking, but measuring the temperatures in the fridge and the state of its appearance isn't a good start.
There's a slight problem with the temperature control in the fridge. Some of the foods are at a temperature higher than they should be. It's not helped by the fact that these strips are perished. As well as being perished, as you can see, they're also mouldy and really quite dirty in places. So obviously cleaning of this particular piece of equipment isn't up to scratch.
Next, Faye's a little concerned about the microwave.
Well, it's looking to be quite damaged and it's like peeling off, so debris and dirt has gone down the back of it, so it could start affecting the way the microwave works.
For John, the building itself could also do with a bit of attention.
We've got some missing tiles here, obviously exposed some bare plaster. I can see where sort of food splat has occurred, so we'd therefore be looking for those tiles or a repair job to be done there to make sure that that is easy to clean. Also, when you've got a situation like that, you could have sort of physical contamination getting into people's food, lumps of tile, plaster, paint, etc.
So there's problems aplenty, but nothing so far that could be deemed as serious. Next up, though, will be the cooking areas. At the Indian takeaway in Wolverhampton, restaurant inspectors John and Faye are wrapping up their surprise routine inspection. All John's got to do is check out the cooking area.
The cleaning in the sort of the areas you can see isn't too bad. It's the more hidden areas, beneath equipment, behind equipment, and the more inaccessible areas, that's where cleaning's is particularly bad. The sort of thing we're looking at here has been here longer than a couple of days, probably a couple of weeks, maybe as long as a month, that sort of level.
So the restaurant's had its fair share of problems with too much food being left out at room temperature, the overall condition of the building itself, and the need for a really thorough deep clean. But it's the good food handling practices that they've seen in the kitchen that's impressed John and Faye.
We often think that the most critical part is the handling practices, although the place perhaps needed a bit of structural improvement and some improved cleaning. The fact that they're handling the food in a safe manner does give us some confidence, and we can sort of walk away thinking, yeah, people are safe to eat the food that's produced there.
Sometimes when you eat out, it may be better not to see the kitchens. They can be a serious source of food poisoning. But our hard-working band of grime fighters don't have a choice. In Wolverhampton, Johnny and Faye, 2 restaurant inspectors, are on their way to check out a fish and chip shop.
Hiya. Oh, I'll check a few details with you first. Basically, I'll go through food handling practices.
Faye's going to be talking about handling practices, and I'm going to be kind of doing an assessment of the structure. I'll be looking to make sure that it's effectively proof against pests, that it's kept clean, and that equipment's clean and in good repair.
Johnny begins his search. The kitchen's not exactly spotless, but at least there's no sign of pests. It isn't long, though, before Johnny reveals a problem.
Okay, so that's a bit concerning. It looks like we've kind of got some potentially dried blood. Now, rather alarmingly, there's a cucumber. Yes, it's wrapped, sort of lying in the blood. That material there contains bacteria because it's from raw meat.
Oh, yeah, I know, but at the end of the day, some oil, everything to clean it.
You need to make sure that that doesn't come into contact with things like cucumber and tomatoes, because then we're going to have cross-contamination.
Johnny patiently explains the position, but it's not clear that his explanation is fully understood.
Because it's quite a major cause of food poisoning, and because of the risk there, I'm actually going to ask them to chuck that in the bin.
Meanwhile, Faye wants to check that they've been using the correct working practices.
So, apart from the sanitizer, what other cleaning products have you got? What other things do you use? The bleach. So, where do you use the bleach?
On the floor.
Then the sanitizers on all your surfaces. Okay.
And correct working practices don't include a freezer doubling as a dustbin.
Have these kebabs been cooled down after cooking? These ones, look, these have already been on the spit, haven't they?
Now show when you see the waters come in the meats. Just throw out tomorrow.
Well, why is it in the freezer if you're going to throw it out?
This is smelling outside there. This is lot smelling.
But what's better, to have a bad smell outside or contaminate the food that you're going to serve to customers?
Despite the owner's excuses, it seems that food which should be in the bin could be being sold to customers.
What is that? Is that fish scraps,
Yes,
is it?
Yeah. Some take them out. This one's on all of the bin today. Tomorrow come in bins and everything.
See, how long have you had all that for?
All weeks.
I think it's more important that you get them straight in the bin, okay?
It soon becomes clear that this little shop is full of horrors.
This is some equipment that they use to slice cucumber and tomato. That hasn't been washed very recently, has it? No.
The owner claims he doesn't use it.
If you don't use it and it's dirty, why don't you throw it in the bin?
No, washing up.
You're going to wash it up because you use it? Yeah, okay. You tried to offer him some advice and assistance, and he tries just to sort of rubbish it, if you like, by saying he hasn't had time. I mean, you know, it's just little things that perhaps indicate that they're not cleaning as thoroughly and as regularly as they should.
The restaurant is far from perfect, but Johnny and Faye have decided that this is not the moment for sudden and drastic action.
There needs to be some improvements, so a revisit will happen in a couple of months.
For the thousands of professionals keeping us filth-free around the country, the job of the restaurant inspectors is surely one of the most important for our public well-being. Here in Wolverhampton, John and Faye's daily job is to make sure that behind the welcoming facade of the multitude of restaurants, the public are as safe as they can be from possible bad food hygiene in the kitchens. Today is a surprise visit to an Indian restaurant that in the past has become a regular haunt.
The premises has been a problem in the past, but I believe they may be under new proprietorship, so their past history wouldn't necessarily be taken into consideration. The worst that could happen is that we find sort of rodent activity, either rats or mice, and if we can determine that it's an active infestation, then the premises would be shut down.
After politely gaining entry, John and Faye can now go about their inspection. First impressions of the kitchen, however, don't look that good.
The kitchen looks very cluttered, and ideally you wouldn't have clutter in the kitchen. You want to be be able to have a food premises which is easy to keep clean. One of the major problems with too much clutter in a kitchen is that you're not able to easily identify rodent activity. One of the things we sort of look for is if there's food lying around at room temperature. Obviously food needs to be kept under temperature control conditions to ensure that the particular problem with rice is that rice, you actually get spores forming in rice, and the problem is you can't kill those spores, okay, and they'll actually produce a toxin, and no amount of reheating would actually remove that toxin from the food. So we'd be looking for them to be keeping food in the fridge under temperature controlled conditions, and in particular foods like rice.
Very quickly, the threat of toxins from room temperature rice pale into insignificance with another of John's discoveries.
One problem I've just found, I've looked in a large container of rice here, and unfortunately what we've got is a screw, a large masonry screw, which is obviously something you don't want to see in rice, and would be particularly unpleasant if that ended up on someone's plate. But it doesn't really bear thinking about what would happen if that got into somebody's mouth. So I'm pleased I found it really, rather than a diner.
After the extra ingredient in the rice, the poppadom cupboard is next on the agenda.
I can see that they've got a cabinet here which they're using to keep foods warm. Again, minor cleaning issues, there's accumulation there of food, perhaps hasn't been cleaned for a while. Things like poppadoms, they're a ready-to-eat food, so it's really important that they're protected against any source of contamination. So perhaps cleaning appears to be an issue.
With the storage of the rice and the poppadoms already conspiring against the proprietor, let's just hope things are set to improve. In Wolverhampton, restaurant inspectors John and Faye are continuing their unannounced inspection of the local Indian restaurant. Already they found a masonry screw in a bucket of rice, and the poppadom cupboard didn't get the thumbs up. It looks like things might be getting even worse, with a good look at a chopping board.
Another sort of issue I've found is the condition of this chopping board. Okay, as you can see, heavily scored, and there's even sort of mould accumulation. Now the problem with heavily scored chopping boards is that the scores will harbour bacteria, and once a chopping board's got into this sort of condition, as you can see it's quite sort of porous, you can't keep it clean. Pretty unpleasant really. So this chopping board is good for the bin.
General cleanliness of a kitchen can tell a lot about how it's run and how the staff are dealing with more serious issues like cross-contamination of food. Consequently, John is always eager to check in the darkest recesses of an establishment. The floors under the worktops need cleaning every 3 days. A quick look with the torch will reveal all.
What I can sort of see under here is that there's an accumulation of food debris. It's important to distinguish between what's from today and what's been there for a while. And I can see from looking at here that some of this has been here for quite some time. For example, there's what appears to be a rotten potato. It just shows that, somebody's not taken a brush to the floor.
Not only are the kitchen staff seemingly not sweeping under the cabinets, Faye has now discovered even the most rudimentary cleanliness can't really be achieved.
When did the soap run out? Did you not want to buy any more soap? No. Okay. You're happy with the fairy liquid? Okay.
John is also finding out that the lack of hand soap isn't the only problem when it comes to the washing up.
We've got a container being used for storage of cleaning equipment. Now, as you can see, you probably can't smell it. We've got cleaning cloths which are just in an atrocious state really, covered in food debris, in a poor condition. If you're using something to clean, it's obviously got to be clean. You can't clean with dirty equipment. Also here, we've got a colander, which obviously they've done a bit of a DIY job on it. You can see where they've drilled the holes bigger. Now what that's actually left behind is sharp metal shards which could come off into food and again end up on somebody's plate. So again, that's the sort of equipment that just needs to go in the bin.
John and Faye have finished their inspection of the Indian restaurant. They found that the establishment's cleaning of kitchen equipment and surfaces isn't up to scratch, and also more attention needs to be paid to cross-contamination in the fridge. John and Faye always allow time for proprietors to put things right, so for the time being, the restaurant is getting a stay of execution.
I was just explaining that we're probably going to revisit in about a month's time because there's a few cleaning issues and cleaning has been an issue in the past, but the proprietor isn't here at the moment, so I've just obtained his contact telephone number, his mobile, and I'm going to speak to him and then do a revisit in about a month.
For all the inspectors, it's not so much about being heavy-handed and closing food businesses down. It's about educating the cultural mix of eateries in Wolverhampton about the British laws they have to comply with, but at the same time making sure that the inspectors are fully aware of what all the diverse religions in the city require.
We also try and sort of keep abreast of different sort of religions and what they eat and their beliefs, so we're not sort of trying to ask them to do something which is totally against the religion and their beliefs, really.
And with over 500 restaurants and 300 takeaways in Wolverhampton alone, it's a constant balance that John and Faye relish.
Here in Wolverhampton, John and Faye are about to make an unannounced visit to one of the city's many takeaways.
So we're now going to be doing a routine food hygiene inspection, a fish and chip shop, and hopefully we'll find that everything's good at this premises. My name's Jonathan, and this is my colleague Faye. We're here today to do a routine food hygiene inspection.
Okay.
And is it okay to come and have a chat? Yep.
After gaining entry, their first stop is always the hand basin in the kitchens, a good test of the overall attitude towards cleanliness.
The wash hand basin was bone dry when I came in, so it clearly hasn't been used, and there's also no soap, so I was just asking the food handler how he washes his hands, and apparently they go upstairs to a wash hand basin every time. I'm not inclined to believe them.
Faye isn't convinced about the upstairs facilities. She wants to see for herself.
Does hot water come out of that? Only cold? Okay. So if you do wash your hands, you wash it in this sink, and you've only got cold water to wash your hands? Yeah. Okay, you're not washing your hands very well then, are you?
Back down in the kitchens, the main sink and food prep areas are causing concern.
The law requires that food surfaces are easily cleanable and in good condition, and this isn't.
But under closer inspection, the state of the basins are put on hold as Faye makes an alarming discovery.
Rat droppings, I think. I think I've found rat droppings. No.
Finding evidence of rats in any restaurant is as serious as it gets. If further investigations prove there's an infestation, John and Faye will have no alternative but to close the takeaway down immediately. In Wolverhampton, restaurant inspectors John and Faye are continuing their surprise inspection of a local takeaway. They've quickly found evidence of rats on the premises, with the discovery of droppings under the food prep area.
Having either mice or a rat infestation is one of the most serious things that can occur within a food business. They carry a whole host of bacteria, and they indiscriminately wee and poo everywhere. And if they've contaminated work surfaces or food, then the food that they've been selling to customers is not safe, and so it's serious.
Standard procedure dictates that Faye now needs to establish whether the droppings are hard or soft to confirm the age of the infestation. And now there are further questions on the general cleanliness of the restaurant.
The rat droppings here are hard, which would indicate that they've been here for some time, but also they've not cleaned properly.
Faye and John need to assess quickly the real extent of the problem. As they investigate further, the lack of hygiene is obvious.
This is shocking in here. I mean, this room is being used as your potato preparation room, and the condition of it is poor. You've got bare plaster, you've got bare floor, broken tiles, bare ceiling, and also you've got a massive great gap around the door and under the door.
John has seen bait boxes in the premises, but with rat droppings in the backyard and the lack of proofing, he is, to say the least, concerned.
They're aware of the problem. Now surely if they're aware of a problem out here, they would try their utmost to prevent them getting in. They haven't done that, which is obviously really frustrating.
John and Faye now set about a thorough search of the whole restaurant for evidence. Behind nearly every freezer, cooker and work surface, they find hundreds of droppings, often accompanied by smear marks left by the rat's oily fur. It's now time to confront the owner about his knowledge of the infestation.
Do you know what a rat dropping looks like? No.
If you don't know what a rat dropping looks like, how are you checking to make sure that you've got none in here? You haven't been.
John and Faye have heard enough. They decide to close the restaurant. So they call their boss Steve to come down and verify their decision. While they wait for Steve, Faye breaks the bad news to the owner.
The fact of the matter is that you are likely to be shut tonight and you won't be opened until the problem has gone.
The owner has no option but to wait to learn of his potential fate. At the takeaway in Wolverhampton, restaurant inspectors John and Faye have been joined by their boss Steve. After a detailed inspection, he makes his decision.
To protect the public health, we think the decision's got to be a formal closure.
This ruling is always difficult for the inspectors because it could ruin the business.
The decision to actually formally close premises is done in the public health interest. It's not a decision that we take lightly.
Complying with the law, Faye now displays a notice of closure in the window of the restaurant. It's up to the owners to sort out all the problems and to satisfy the inspectors that their restaurant is fit for purpose. Then, and only then, will it be allowed to reopen. Keeping up standards in restaurant hygiene is a never-ending business. You need dedicated inspectors, and in Wolverhampton, two of the finest are Johnny and Faye. A few weeks ago, they visited this kebab shop and were far from impressed. Today, they're back and in no mood to compromise.
We'll be making sure that sort of all the points on our letter, all the legal contraventions have now been attended to.
On their last visit, Faye found raw meat alongside cooked food.
Marco's told me that he's purchased this new fridge, because this wasn't here previously, to put raw food in.
Faye is determined to keep up standards.
This is not raw.
That's the chicken nuggets as
Yeah,
well.
but no, well, that's not. This isn't. So all of that could just go in here, and then you've got total separation. There isn't much cross-contamination going on, but if you've got a separate fridge, you might as well just use it all for raw and then put the ready-to-eat in these separate fridges. So that's what I was just explaining to him.
This was a problem last time.
We've got a container full of sort of festering water, which looks and smells pretty disgusting, really.
Today, the same area is spotless.
What I've seen is they've clearly made lots of efforts with the cleaning. The premises is now clean.
Last time, Faye was worried about the fridge.
This is probably one of the worst seals that I've seen.
It's been sorted out.
They've obviously replaced the seals and they're currently keeping them in a clean condition, which is good to see.
And then there was the problem of the chopping boards.
As you can see, they're in an absolutely atrocious condition.
So we've got some new chopping boards. Great, okay.
And the verdict?
I think they've spent a lot of time and effort on making sure that those efforts are addressed, which is obviously great. And it's good to see somebody taking it seriously.
We want to see that this continue in the future, and that will help, raise our confidence in the management.
Every night after closing time in London's West End, many of those who've had a few drinks now want a few eats. There's a temptation to go for an unreliable source, but that could be a big mistake. Council Enforcement Officer Vince and his team have the hot dog sellers in their sights. Tonight, they're straight into action.
If you look down in here, no refrigeration. The sausages just loose, open to the elements. We've got the onions here, as you can see. They're not particularly clean, but these get cut up and thrown on the hot plate. As you can see in there, some greasy piece of tissue. It's not particularly nice, not particularly hygienic.
It's their job to protect the public.
The threat of food poisoning is always there. I said there's no hand washing facilities, so if someone's used the toilet, next thing they're coming out and cooking the sausages. It's not particularly nice. These sausages would have already been part cooked or pre-cooked. Looks to me they would have probably been stored in that box. You can see the amount of grease in there. They would have had the cooked sausages in it, and then they're going to be put on the hot plate. It's not particularly hygienic.
Now this man won't be selling bangers. He's banged to rights. And Vince explains how this food chain has been broken.
We're going to take the trolley to them that's worth probably in the region of between 150 to 200 pounds.
Back on the hunt for rogue hot dog vendors in London's West End, Vince takes a call.
November Whiskey 2, be with you in about figures 5, over.
And another unlicensed hot dog seller is about to feel the heat.
All right, we just had a report from the CCTV that we've got a hot dog trader that had been trading.
This is best food and very cheap.
Do you have a licence to trade on the streets of Brisbane? You don't have a licence. I'm going to be reporting you for the offence of illegally street trading.
It's not just a question of dodgy food. This piece of kit is a potential bomb.
It's got a wooden floor, doors made of wood, gas bottle, and a regulator goes through to the burner. As you can see on here, it's not particularly secure. If there was to be a gas leak, there could quite easily be an explosion. It makes them quite a dangerous thing to be actually out on the street. There was actually one of these exploded in the past.
2 busts in one evening means it's been a good night for Vince, but he knows the rogues will return.
We seize approximately 500 trolleys a year. They're trying to negate that by making their trolleys cheaper so they can produce more and get them more out on the street. We're trying to make it economically unviable for them to come out here and trade.
I swear it's best food. Hot dog is best food. I swear. Everything is fresh, everything is good.
The vendor may have faith in his product, but it's not a faith that Vince shares.
Oh, put it this way, I wouldn't want to eat it.
But it is best food in the West End, I want to swear my land. 1 hot dogs, buy 1 free.
We'll see by the end of the night when there's a lot more trolleys on the van to see if they're still in such a jovial mood.